My only son, my David, the one I raised on my own since he was a little boy, the one I poured every drop of my love and every penny of my savings into, he looked me in the eye on my 60th birthday and told me to get out of my own house. Not a single tear, not an ounce of remorse, just a cold, hard stare that pierced right through to my soul. He'd done his homework, you see. He'd used the power of attorney I'd so trustingly signed to put everything in his name. My beautiful two-story home in Atlanta, the home where I raised him, where he took his first steps, where we decorated the Christmas tree together every year, it wasn't mine anymore. The very locks on the doors, the ones he changed as I stood there in shock, were a physical manifestation of his betrayal. He blocked my number on my phone, deleted my social media accounts, and left me with nothing but a small purse and the weight of a lifetime of love that he had just crushed under his boot heel. He thought he had won. He'd achieved his so-called hostile takeover of my entire life, and he was sure he was set for life. He didn't know he was about to learn a lesson in divine justice, that there is a higher power at play in this world. What he did on that day in his greed and arrogance was to close one door on me. But what he didn't realize, what he couldn't possibly understand with his worldly mind, was that a prayer, a quiet, broken-hearted whisper of a plea to a holy power, was about to open an entire world for me. A world of purpose, of faith, and of grace. A world that would not only bring me peace, but would also bring him back to me years later, humbled and desperate, with his hands out, begging for a job from the very person he had tried to destroy. My prayer didn't just save me from financial ruin. It saved his soul from a path of eternal destruction, and it gave us both a second chance. Before we continue, make sure you follow our page so you don't miss our next true stories. And if you like what you hear, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and let us know what part of the United States you're watching from in the comments. Your engagement helps us share these messages with more people who need to hear them. Thank you. My life was a portrait of the American dream, a modest one, but it was mine. A little two-story brick house with a tidy yard in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. My husband passed when our son, David, was just a little boy, and I had to take over his small construction business. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. It wasn't easy. I was a woman in a man's world, and they didn't take kindly to that. I had to learn everything from scratch, from the best way to get a permit to dealing with subcontractors who thought they could get one over on a woman. I worked long hours, running payroll from my kitchen table, managing client contracts, and making sure the business didn't just survive, but thrived. I did it all for David. Every late night, every early morning, every dollar I put away was for him. He was my purpose, my reason for being. I put him through a top-tier business school at Emory University. That was my proudest moment. I remember taking him on a campus tour, and he looked so handsome and so smart in his new clothes from Macy's. He was brilliant. He'd come home for breaks and tell me about finance, about venture capital, and hostile takeovers. He wanted to build an empire, to be the next big thing, and I was so proud of him. I told him he could have the business when he was ready, that I'd retire and live a quiet life of gardening and volunteering at the local church. I trusted him completely. He had a fiancée, a lovely girl named Emily, and I was looking forward to a house full of grandchildren. I never saw the storm coming. I had so much faith in him, in his education, and in the path he was on. I told him he could have full access to the business accounts, that I would teach him everything I knew about my clients and my subcontractors. I saw him not as a child, but as a partner. I trusted him with my life, with my legacy. He would call me from his fancy internship in New York City and tell me about the big deals he was making, the important people he was meeting. He'd send me pictures of himself in a suit and tie, smiling at a fancy restaurant. And I, like a fool, would proudly show the pictures to my neighbors, telling them about my brilliant son, a future leader of industry. He would ask me to sign papers, to transfer funds, to make things official. And I, in my naive trust, never once questioned him. I just did as he asked, believing I was helping him achieve his dreams. He told me he wanted to be an entrepreneur, to take his education and use it to build something big. I remember him telling me about a new business opportunity, a chance to diversify our portfolio by investing in a new software company. I didn't understand all the fancy words, but he made it sound so exciting and so safe. I signed the papers he handed me, not knowing I was signing my entire life away to a massive investment scheme and a fraudulent financial transaction. My son, the person I trusted most, was using my assets to build a secret empire of lies and deception. My small business and my home were just another asset, a line item on his balance sheet to be cashed out for his own personal gain. He had promised me a quiet, peaceful retirement, and instead he was planning my financial demise. The house, the business, the money, it was all just a game to him. A game of corporate espionage and elder financial abuse that I was losing, and I didn't even know I was playing. The day was supposed to be a celebration. It was my 60th birthday, and David had planned a surprise brunch at my favorite cafe, a little place downtown called the Flying Biscuit. He'd even bought me a new dress from Nordstrom's for the occasion. I was so happy, so full of love, I didn't see the coldness in his eyes. He arrived right on time, a beautiful bouquet of my favorite flowers from Kroger's in one hand and a stack of legal documents in the other. He made it all seem so casual, so everyday, as if signing away my life was just another birthday gift. He made me a cup of coffee in my favorite mug, a gift he had bought me years ago for Mother's Day, and we sat on the front porch. The morning sun was warm on my skin, and the air was filled with the scent of freshly cut grass. Everything felt so perfectly normal, so right. He started talking about a new opportunity, a chance to sell the construction business to a large corporation. He made it sound like a blessing, a way for me to get a huge lump sum to live out my golden years. I, of course, signed the papers he handed me. I trusted him. How could I not? He was my son, the boy I had raised. His word was my bond. I signed my life away, and I didn't even know it. I remember the weight of the pen in my hand, the crisp sound of the paper as I signed my name. I was so filled with love and pride, I didn't even bother to read the words. I was signing away my business, my home, my past, and my future. A single, small, but devastating act of fraudulent conveyance. After the signing, he leaned over and kissed me on the forehead. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said, and I felt a warmth spread through my chest. But then his smile vanished. "One more thing," he said, and the words that followed hit me like a physical blow. "The company wants a clean title. They need the house too." I looked at him confused. "But David, this is our home. Where would I go?" He shrugged, his face cold and unfeeling, like he was talking about an old piece of furniture. "I don't know, Mom. It's a business deal. The corporate attorneys said we need to be out by the end of the day. You'll get a nice settlement check from the sale. You can find a condo or something." The nonchalant way he said it, it was worse than any angry word. It was pure business. There was no emotion, no love. Just a cold, calculated transaction. He had just broken a fundamental breach of trust and the fiduciary duty he owed me, and he didn't seem to care. I didn't get a check. The papers I signed weren't about a merger. They were about a corporate hostile takeover of my small business and a fraudulent transfer of my property. By the time I realized the truth, David had already used my power of attorney to transfer everything to his name. He was gone and the locks were changed. My son had committed financial fraud and elder abuse, and he had done it on the very day of my birth. The police and legal services I reached out to told me it would be a long, difficult case. They said there was little they could do because I had signed the papers and his use of the power of attorney was legally binding, a devastating legal ramification of my trust. I was left with a purse, my phone, and a heart shattered into a million pieces. I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to, and a lifetime of hard work wiped out in a single, cruel act of deception. My life, my home, my family, everything I thought I knew was gone. I was just another victim in a white-collar crime that had been meticulously planned by my own son. I spent the first few nights in my car in a Walmart parking lot. I didn't know what else to do. My pride was too big to beg for help from friends, and my heart was too broken to even think straight. I would just sit there, staring at the flashing sign, feeling so utterly alone. The car felt like a cold coffin. The vinyl seats were stiff, and every passing headlight felt like a spotlight on my shame. I kept my head down, huddled under an old blanket, clutching my purse like it was the only thing I had left in the world. I felt the cold seeping into my bones, a physical manifestation of the loneliness that had settled in my soul. I'd watch families walk by, laughing as they went into the store for milk and bread, and I felt a grief so deep I thought it might swallow me whole. I had a little prayer in my heart, a whisper to God asking for a sign. Just a sign that I hadn't been forgotten. And he answered. He works in mysterious ways, and he has a plan for all of us, even when we can't see it. It was my old friend, Sarah, who found me. She had been worried when I didn't show up for our regular morning coffee at the Waffle House, our little tradition. She came to the house, saw the new locks, and called my cell phone over and over. When I finally answered, my voice was barely a whisper. She drove to my last known location and found me in my car, looking a wreck. When I told her what happened, she didn't say a word. She just opened her car door, said, "Let's go," and drove me to a small town just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. She had an idea. She'd been doing some genealogy, and she had discovered some distant cousins in that very town. She thought we could stay with them for a while, just to get back on my feet. The town was a mess. It was an old textile town that had gone to seed. The buildings were falling apart, and the town center was nothing but boarded up storefronts. But Sarah, with her eyes of faith, pointed at a huge old building, the old textile mill. "It's for sale, Martha," she said. "We can buy it, restore it, and turn it into something new." I just stared at her. "With what money, Sarah? I have nothing." That's when she told me about a trust that my husband had set up for me years ago. A little sum of money that was meant for a rainy day. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough for a down payment. He had hired a lawyer from a reputable law firm to draw up a simple revocable trust, a quiet act of love and estate planning. My husband, who had always looked out for me, was a testament to God's love, even after all these years. He had provided for me when I didn't even know I needed it. It was a true miraculous intervention, a form of divine financial protection that I never knew existed. The legal documents David had used for his fraudulent scheme had overlooked this small trust, a divine oversight that would become my lifeline. We bought the old mill, and that was the beginning of my true purpose. I used my knowledge of the construction business, and Sarah used her talent for design. We started small, but our work was a prayer made manifest. We restored that old building, and then another and another. We created a real estate investment trust focused on urban renewal, and our small, hopeful company grew into a huge one. We specialized in turning old buildings into beautiful, functional spaces. We brought new life to old towns, and in a few short years, we were a national name. I had found my true calling, my true friends, and my faith was stronger than ever. The betrayal had led me to my destiny. My son's elder financial abuse had, through God's will, become my spiritual awakening and a testament to the power of prayer. Our work was our ministry, and every restored building was a sermon on the power of faith and perseverance. Every brick we laid was a prayer, and every coat of paint was a hymn. We proved that with faith, you can turn a life of misery into a work of divine art. Life has a way of coming full circle. Years later, my son, David, was a different person. His venture capital fund had failed, not just in some distant boardroom, but in a very public, humiliating way. The deal he made to buy my business was an elaborate scam, a tangled web of corporate espionage and white-collar crime that the FBI had finally untangled. The corporation he sold it to was a shell company created by a notorious group of con artists, and when they were caught, the ripple effect was devastating. David had been so focused on getting rich quick that he had been blind to the red flags. He'd lost everything: the luxury condo on Park Avenue, the fancy car, the Rolex he had so proudly shown me, and his fiancée Emily, who left him the moment the money stopped flowing. He was left with nothing but his shame and the heavy burden of his legal troubles. His name was everywhere, a footnote in a major fraudulent scheme that had wiped out the retirement savings of dozens of other people. He was just another victim of a financial crisis he had set in motion himself. The fancy life he'd built on my heartache had turned to dust, a hollow monument to his greed. He called me from a cheap motel in Boston. The sound of his voice was a broken whisper, unrecognizable from the confident, arrogant tone I remembered. The background noise was a symphony of his failure. The distant wail of a police siren, the faint murmur of a television from the room next door, and the hum of a flickering air conditioning unit. He was working for a delivery service just to pay the rent on his little room. He called me and he was crying not just with a few tears, but with a deep, heart-wrenching sobs. "Mom," he said, "I'm so sorry. I lost everything. I made so many mistakes. They called me in for questioning, Mom. They said I was involved in money laundering and racketeering. They asked about the papers I made you sign. I told them everything. I just couldn't lie anymore. I lost everything, Mom. My reputation, my money, my future. I lost it all. I should have listened to you." The truth is, he had made a terrible mistake. But I had moved on. My company, Martha's Miracles, was a national success story. We had just completed a massive project, restoring an entire block of historic buildings in a once dilapidated neighborhood of Philadelphia. We were featured in Forbes magazine, on NBC News, and on the front page of countless newspapers. I was a guest on national television, being interviewed about my spiritual journey and how my faith had led me to this great work. My story was a testament to the power of God, and my name was no longer a footnote in a story of betrayal, but a headline in a story of redemption. I had found my true purpose, and my life was filled with joy and meaning. I had friends and a community that loved me, and I was giving back to the world in a way I never thought possible. My company wasn't just a business, it was a ministry, a way to show others that with faith, you can overcome any obstacle, no matter how big. My son, on the other hand, had lost his way. His life had become a cautionary tale, a lesson in the dangers of greed and the emptiness of a life lived without faith. The very things he had valued, the money, the power, the fame, had abandoned him, leaving him with nothing but the weight of his guilt and the cold, hard reality of his mistakes. And in that, there was a kind of justice, a divine order that had restored balance to the world. He had taken everything from me, but in doing so, he had given me a gift far more valuable than any earthly possession, my faith, my purpose, and my peace. The truth is, he had made a terrible mistake, but I had moved on. My company, Martha's Miracles, was a national success story, and I was looking for a new manager for our expansion in New York. I told him he could have the job, but it wouldn't be easy. "It's a step down for you," I said, "but you'll have to earn it. You'll be working with a team, dealing with contractors face to face, not just on a computer screen. You'll be managing the physical labor, the actual building, the real world problems that come with it." He took the job. I won't lie, it was awkward at first. The people on the team, many of them loyal to me for decades, looked at him with a mix of suspicion and contempt. He, in his perfectly tailored suit that now seemed to hang off his frame, looked completely out of place on the dusty, noisy construction site. He was used to air-conditioned offices and clean hands. The first day, I gave him a simple task, sorting out a pile of old lumber. He stared at it for a moment, as if I had asked him to decipher an ancient text. He was clumsy, his hands, once so quick with a keyboard and a pen, were now slow and unsure. He got a splinter, and I saw him wince, a small, involuntary reaction that spoke volumes about his new reality. He was out of his element, and for the first time in his life, he was truly humbled. He was no longer the brilliant, arrogant young man I had once known. He was just a worker trying to find his way, and for the first time, he was seeing the world from the bottom up. Over the next few months, I watched him from a distance. He learned to swing a hammer. He learned to speak to the crew, not with condescension, but with respect. He learned that a handshake was worth more than a dozen legal documents, and that the sweat on a man's brow was a sign of his integrity. He learned that the quiet, patient process of building something with your own hands was far more satisfying than the quick, fleeting thrill of a financial deal. He became part of the team, and they, in turn, began to accept him. They saw that he was no longer the greedy boy who had wronged his mother, but a man who was working hard to atone for his mistakes. He was learning about more than just business. He was learning about life. One day I saw him working on a small, painstaking task, carefully painting the trim on a window. He was completely focused, a look of quiet concentration on his face. He had a look of peace I had never seen on him before. I went over and stood by him for a while, just watching him work. He didn't even notice I was there until he was done with the section. He looked up, his eyes a little tired, but his face had a newfound warmth. "Mom," he said, "I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. You were always right. This is what real work feels like. It feels good." He took a step back, looking at the building, and for the first time, I saw him truly see what we were doing. He saw the beautiful, restored building, a monument to faith and hard work, and I saw a man who was finally learning to appreciate the true miracles in this world. He's a good worker. He works for me now, and he's not the same greedy boy he used to be. He's humbled, and he's finally found a purpose beyond money. He's found his faith, and he's learning that a life built on a foundation of faith and hard work is more fulfilling than a life built on greed. He helps me manage our business, and he's getting to see the world from a different perspective. He's getting to see the world from my perspective, the one he once threw away. This is a story of faith, of forgiveness, and of finding strength in the most unexpected places. It's a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is a path to healing and a purpose waiting for us. We may stumble, we may fall, and we may be hurt by the very people we trust the most. But when we turn to a higher power, when we embrace faith, we find that our pain can be turned into purpose. My son's betrayal became my spiritual awakening, and my loss became a life of service and prosperity. Forgiveness is a difficult road, but it is one that leads to true freedom. I had to forgive David, not for his sake, but for my own. And in doing so, I found a peace that money could never buy. His journey back to me was a testament to God's love and mercy, and for that I am grateful. If this message resonated with you, I pray you'll do a few things for me. Please, follow our page so you don't miss our next true story. Give this video a like to help us spread this message of hope. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Your support helps us reach more people who are going through their own trials. Thank you, and may God bless you.